The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
I said it in a tweet and I said it on a premium cast, but I've been sort of waiting to reuse this same line on an actual free show, and that is the magic of the yin-yang of this last 3 days of basketball was really something to behold. It was like a yin, a yang, and then a bleh. Friday, the yin. Bunch of interesting things Thursday and Friday, guys, that popped up that seemed like clear adds to your fantasy team. Saturday, a bunch of guys that were terrible, that looked like clear drops for your fantasy team. And then Sunday, well, Sunday, nothing, really. Not totally nothing, but compared to the other two, it was really kind of a whack day. Fairly boring, and that's okay. I mean, I would probably have flipped it around, like the good stuff going into the new week. That would get me a little bit more fired up, but I didn't sleep well last night, so we're going to try to get the energy going the old-fashioned way with a whole bunch of orange juice. And off we go. Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, everybody. I am Dan Besbris. This is, of course, a Hoop Ball presentation. The website, hoop-ball.com. The Twitter handle, at Dan Besbris, at Hoop Ball Fantasy. And we do have plenty of things to talk about. We're going to chat with Tyler Watts later on today's program. He covers the Mavs for the Smoking Cuban. He's also a fantasy basketball writer and fantasy enthusiast, which is a dynamite combination to have as a guest on a podcast. When you can ask about a specific team from a fantasy bent, and you'll hear me. I exploited the crap out of that combo. That was a lot of fun. So that interview is coming up in just a few minutes. We've got the reverse chronological lightning round. We've got a giant Monday to get ready for. I mean, this is crazy. They're rolling us right into the week. No rest for the weary. What do we got? 9-game Monday? I have to admit, I kind of like the weird spaced-out schedule. You've just got like 6 to 9 games every single day, although there is a more traditional Big Wednesday coming up this week. They spread everything out. You don't have giant Wednesdays and Fridays every week. You could take 3 or 4 of those Friday games and sprinkling them across some quieter days makes, I think, a lot of fun. So, before we get into all of that good stuff, I wanted to mention to everybody that I talked to Mr. Aaron Brewski over the weekend. He is, of course, the founder of Hoop Ball and the man in charge of everything that happens at Hoop Ball, and he let me know that the in-season premium package has been dropped because it's now November. I didn't know that was about to happen. I guess maybe I should have known. But now that it's November, the price dropped $5, so it's $24.99 total. And for the next 1 week, it's an additional $5 off. So it's $19.99 right now. And we give out a coupon code later on in today's podcast. It's right near the end of our interview with Mr. Watts. That can take another $3 off that price to $16.99 for November, December, January, February, March, and half of April. Not each month. That's total $16.99 over 5.5 months. That's about $3.09 per month. It's actually less than it was at the very end of October on a per-month basis. What did I say before? Make yourself 1 cup of coffee at home, don't go to Starbucks, and you're golden. That's a whole month of fantasy advice. So please do check that out. Go to hoop-ball.com, click on the Premium tab, choose Go Premium, and I think they've taken away a lot of the preseason stuff now, so they've cleared out the clutter. You want the in-season membership, and again, use a coupon code, get it over the next 7 days, and you can get it for $17, $16.99 for the whole freaking season. You can thank me now. You can thank me later. Whenever you want to thank me, I'm okay with it. Okay, let's get into this stuff. Oh, by the way, thank you to everybody who's been sharing my tweet storms in the evening. That turned into kind of a fun thing. I just did it one time thinking, you know what might be kind of fun? I got to get my thoughts down on paper. And it was sort of initially an exercise for me because my brain is addled. My brain has been decaying over time, and I thought it might be kind of cool to just throw some thoughts down Because that's basically what I'm doing as I go through and I'm watching games and I'm looking at box scores, whatever games I didn't get a chance to watch live, is, okay, what did I learn from this game? So now that they've made tweets 280 characters, I thought, screw it, I'll just start jotting them down on Twitter. And people really seem to like it. You guys really seem to enjoy that stuff. And yesterday, Sunday evenings, was probably like the most liked and shared one so far. So as long as people keep liking and sharing them, and more people keep finding it, I'm just going to keep doing it. There's probably a way to be more efficient with this. Like maybe we do a nightly newsletter that could just fire right into your inbox. Maybe that's even easier than a tweet storm. But for now, this is what we got going on. So thank you to everybody that sent kind words about it, and those of you that are sharing them as well. Okay, reverse chronological lightning round. I think you guys all get the gist of this now. We're going to do Sunday, Saturday, and Friday in that order. We're going to hit every team, all 30, just to get you kind of reset for the week ahead. Anything that you're watching for, anything that happened over the weekend, we will have you situated. We're not going to necessarily go evening to daytime. We're just going to do it reverse by day of the week. And so with that, we jump right into Sunday. And the early game Sunday was Sacramento getting thwomped by Milwaukee, which is basically a game you can throw out, other than the note that Bogdan Bogdanovic is almost back. Bogbog. It's probably Bogdan, right? Bogdan Bogdanovic. He's close. He's close to coming back to me. He should definitely be stashed. I'm not too worried about anybody else on this Kings thing. I took the sign off the treehouse, but they just got worked over by a very good Milwaukee Bucks team. I've heard some rumblings about Dante DiVincenzo, and he's not playing enough minutes to be a worthwhile addition. It's a good basketball team, and good for Ersan Ilyasova to actually somehow maintain some value even with Giannis back. But to me, it's a little bit too iffy to kind of gamble on somebody with no upside. New York, Washington, everybody was on Mitchell Robinson watch, and he was okay. 10-6 with a block, made all 4 of his free throws, 3 out of 6 of his shots. He actually did get outplayed by Enes Kanter in this game, who had 18 and 12 in 24 minutes. Looks like they're going to be splitting time largely at the 5, but 24 minutes is more than enough for Enes Kanter to do some damage. Otherwise, Frank Ntilikina, the aggression that we saw for 2 games is gone. Noah Vonleh, foul trouble for the 2nd consecutive ballgame. Tim Hardaway Jr. hurt his back in this one, but ended up coming back to finish the ballgame, so even if he's out, it's probably not going to be long-term. Kevin Knox likely to be back later this week, which means whatever Noah Vonleh was doing is likely to go down the toilet. Is Kevin Knox worth owning? Probably not. In a 12-team league, he is heavy on the shooting and light on the everything else. But if you're in a league that overvalues points, then that's a spot where maybe you should consider him. Since it sounds like either Wednesday or I think they play Friday or Saturday. One of those 2 games, he's probably coming back. So that's good news. It seems like they're going to stick with this. Mario Hezonja was the other story from this game. He played 25 strong minutes for New York. But again, he's another guy that's going to lose out when Knox comes back. His minutes get harder to come by. I'm surprised he wasn't seeing 25 minutes every night. He's a guy who can do a bunch of things, but he just got worked defensively by Markieff Morris for stretches in this game, and so you can kind of understand why maybe he's not on the floor a ton. Over on the Washington side, Dwight Howard actually did provide some measure of stabilization for this team, and John Wall played well for a night, and they won. So, beat New York in Washington. Thank goodness for that. Philly got blown out by Brooklyn. I have a thought on Philadelphia. There's this Twitter thing going around right now where everybody's like, why is everybody hating on Markelle Fultz? And we're not. From a fantasy perspective, we certainly are. On this show, we talk about how he's a terrible fantasy asset. He's sitting outside the top 200, and people are still talking about him as a trade chip. He's averaging 9 points, 4 boards, 3.5 assists, a steal on 39% shooting, 67% at the free throw line. I mean, he's been, by all accounts, a very bad fantasy player. From a reality standpoint, I think a lot of us are actually rooting for him to be successful. It's tough to see someone go through a mental block like that, to have that be the aspect that they can't quite clear. I think what everybody hates is how Philly ended up with the team that they have. I know, speaking for me personally, the process was very annoying. I thought that it was a terrible thing for folks to glorify. They glorified the fact that this team lost for 5 consecutive seasons as hard as they possibly could. Stockpiled first, second, third picks overall, picked a bunch of guys that ended up getting hurt and missing a year so they could just be bad even longer. And then suddenly they had Joel Embiid, they had Ben Simmons, they had Markelle Fultz, they had Nerlens Noel, they had Jahlil Okafor. I mean, of course you're going to end up with a good player if you have 5 tries at it. The first, second, and third picks, I think, overall. Maybe there was a fourth in there. Honestly, I don't remember. Someone can correct me on that. The thing that we want to see Philly fail, those of us that are being accused of hating on Markelle Fultz, we want to see this process fail because if it works, then the idea of the god-awful tank gains more credence. And it's happening in every major sport. You saw it with the Astros in baseball, who went into megatank. The Cubs went into megatank. And these teams, they just start over, and they try to be the worst team on the planet for a couple of years. They're like, look, fan base, you guys can come out for like $1.25. We're going to be terrible for 4 years, and then we're going to be great because tanking is going to work. Those of us that appreciate competitive balance and actually decent basketball games can't stand that that's working. I get it. It's advisable to do it. It's the fastest way to turn a middling team into a top team. You go really bad and hope that you then get really good, as opposed to just being right in the middle. I understand it. It's not that I don't get it at all. I just don't like it, and I don't have to. Whether or not it's working, I don't have to like it. So I think for people that are being accused of hating on Markelle Fultz, and I'm betting I would fall into that category because I don't like his fantasy game, but, from an overall standpoint, you're like, why are you hating on this team? I think most people would say because we don't like how they got there, other than Rob Covington, who was one of the guys they grabbed in their tank fest, and he turned out to be really good. Anyway, irrelevant to the fantasy discussion, but I threw it out there anyway. Brooklyn had a huge game. Philly committed 27 turnovers in this basketball game, and the Nets exploited them for 105 field goal attempts. Yep, you heard that right. Jared Allen, nice game. Karis LeVert, nice game. D'Angelo Russell played well. Joe Harris is shooting a crazy 56% from the field and mostly on three-pointers. There are a lot of things that probably can't hold for an entire year. You saw Rondae Hollis-Jefferson get more into the mix in this game. Spencer Dinwiddie had 12 and 8. It's one of those games where everybody did something, but to me, this team still has too many guys trying to do something. So sell high opportunities wherever you can grab them. You try it. Orlando beat San Antonio in San Antonio. This is a weird one. Magic just got hot. They shot 50%. Aaron Gordon had a rare good shooting game. Evan Fournier has been shooting the ball better for 2 nights after a really slow start to his year. DJ Augustine at 18 and 7. We know how that process goes. Terrence Ross had 17, 3 and 4 with the 3 3-pointers. He's going to be the guy that fills in for Jonathan Isaac. If you want to stream him, I have absolutely no problem with that. Mo Bamba, 12 and 11, but he only played 15 minutes, so that's the kind of thing that screams unsustainable at the current number that he is playing. Spurs are an uninteresting fantasy team, so we'll jump straight to Memphis. Phoenix with a much-needed home win over the Shelvin Mack-led Memphis Grizzlies. This has to be the story of Sunday for sure. I had one eye on him, and I think I put him in the what am I watching category because he had 2 good games in a row while playing big minutes, and there was sort of, I don't know what the hesitation I think has to be the fact that he's just never been good enough to earn these kinds of minutes before. But then Mike Conley got into a bit of foul trouble in this game, and Mack had an opportunity to do more from a usage standpoint, and yesterday's game is the one that I think really woke people up. I picked him up, or I had him, maybe I should say I had he and I had Josh Okogie as the 2 guys that I was debating whether or not to grab yesterday. I ended up going with Josh, I think, in one league and then Mack in the other. So I feel this is one of those times where I did something smart. I'm just putting a little check mark on it. I got accused on this podcast of not admitting when I do things that are wrong. I do things that are wrong all the time. This is one of the times where I got something right. So I feel like I should be able to pat myself on the back a little bit. Anyway, I try. I really do. We did a whole show 2 weeks ago about things that I got wrong. So Shelvin Mack Can he keep up this pace? The answer is a resounding no, because he's shooting 55% from the field. That's unsustainable for a point guard who's taking a bunch of three-pointers every night. Over the last week, he's a top 30 fantasy guy, 18-5 with 2.7 three-pointers, 1.7 steals on 66% shooting from the field. I mean, that's just not, it's not going to happen. If he's taking 10 shots a game, he's not going to make 6.5 of them for the whole year. But what does appear to be sustainable are the minutes. Because in looking at this Grizzlies team, the only guy that could cut into them even a little bit that's not playing right now is Chandler Parsons, and he's really more of a 3, and he's really not able to play more than about 15 minutes a game. So you're looking at a team that has actually said, hey, you know what? This dude's played his way into that backup point guard role. He's big enough and strong enough to potentially play a little 2 against certain lineups, and so we're going to try to get him 27 to 30 minutes a night. And he's playing over the last 3 games, 30, 33, and 28 minutes per game. They really like what he's doing. Now, obviously, he's been hot. So the 14, 19, 21, the whole 18 points a game thing, that's not going to stick. It's going to be more like 12 when the shot kind of levels off. But if he's getting you 5 assists a night, 12-5 with 1 to 1.5 steals, and somewhere around maybe 2, let's say 1.5 to 2 3-pointers, that puts him in usable late round territory. Kind of 3-and-D-ish, but with an extra couple of assists and slightly fewer rebounds. It's an interesting profile and a guy that I think should be at the end of your bench. I think you got to find someone on your team that you could potentially drop, and perhaps one of those names will come up as we talk about the games on Saturday. Slow-mo, the other guy we were watching in this game, he played 26 minutes, had 10-5 with a block, which is baby steps. It's progress. I mean, thing is, I understand if you got to move on. I really do. I can't do it myself because I know that this guy has a top 75 potential, and there just aren't that many guys like that floating around. Like with Shelvin Mack, could he really be a top 75 guy for the year? Nah. I think best case scenario for him is like top 90. And that's cool. He's doing more right now, but to me, we're still in a part of the year where you are hunting upside a little bit. So, the other drops out there are the guys that are playing with an upside similar to Max, where maybe the role is a little bit less defined. That's where you potentially make that swap. Over on the Phoenix side, we got a better game out of Michael Bridges, but TJ Warren was out, so that's likely to come back to earth a little bit. He's a guy, certainly, that Brew mentioned to watch on our Friday show, and you should, but that number is not going to hold. Isaiah Cannon is the starting point guard, and he's just not a thing. And Trevor Ariza, 16-9, 5 assists, 2 steals, 2 3-pointers. He's starting to rebound a little bit. After a very slow start that had a lot of you looking to drop him, he has since rebounded, and he is a top 50 fantasy guy over the last week. If he does that for another week, and you got your normal Trevor Ariza season back. Minnesota-Portland was not interesting at all. Everybody sat it out. Rose, Butler, Teague. Nobody was playing for this team, and they just got killed. Not a whole lot we can learn from this, I don't think. I mean, what more can you say? Okogie played 29 minutes. Could that stick if Jimmy Butler gets traded? Maybe. Possibility. He's a guy that I had towards the end of my bench as well. I think there's a spot for him if you're willing to kind of wait this thing out. But he's going to be the low-usage guy on this team, certainly in the starting lineup, and that makes him a little bit more of a tough own. I think you stick with Derrick Rose. He was probable for this game, and then he ended up sitting it out, so he'll probably be back. I think they're playing tonight. If not then I would guess their next one. Meanwhile, over on the Portland side, Myers Leonard at 15-12. What? We'll scream the next time that happens, but that made for a little bit of a rougher night for Zach Collins. Yusuf Nurkic did well in 23 minutes. Portland looks pretty good this year. I'm surprised. Their defense is locked in, and then Toronto got out to a 30-some-odd point lead. Lakers ended up playing well in the fourth quarter for once, lost by 14 when all is said and done. But they just could not stop Serge Ibaka, who went 15 for 17 in this ball game. And Danny Green, 26 minutes of pure glory, 15 points, 3 boards, 3 assists, 2 blocks, 5 3-pointers on 5 out of 8 shooting. Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. Delon Wright played 21 minutes in this game, by the way, and Danny Green still looked great. And they didn't even need their starters. I think they may have put him in for like a minute towards the end of the fourth quarter when the Lakers made a push, but yeah, that's right. Danny Green hit one last 3-pointer, but I mean, this was a game where starters could have seen another 2 or 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes even, if it was closer. Beautiful. Lakers fans are going crazy. I am a Laker fan who is not going crazy because they won in Portland the night before. They went 1-1 in a Portland-LA Blazers-Raptors back-to-back. That was a best-case scenario, 1-1. Saturday, Philadelphia, we already talked about. Detroit is not an interesting fantasy team. Indiana got a game winner from Victor Oladipo. They beat the Celtics 102-101. That was one of the bets that we had suggested. The Lakers' fade in Portland was one of the first leans I think we've lost all year. I think Andre said we're 5-1 on those types. So we're doing okay. Boston got a whole bunch from Marcus Morris again. I don't know where that's coming from, but look at the spread on this team. Jaylen Brown, 14 shots. Marcus Morris, 13. Al Horford, 13. Kyrie, 12. Tatum, 11. Hayward, 10. Too many mouths. Too many mouths to feed on this Boston team. For Indiana, Tyreek Evans got the shot to drop a little bit, which, of course, cut into a Darren Collison run. Miles Turner slowed a tad in this ballgame. Thad Young couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, but the other stats were there. 8 boards, 5 assists, and a steal. He just couldn't make a bucket. And apparently he's probable with a cold, so maybe that had something to do with it. Cleveland, things have unraveled. With Kevin Love out for 6 weeks and LeBron gone, who the hell knows what's going on here? This is a team I want everybody watching on a night-to-night basis to see if anything starts to crystallize a little bit. But right now, they're all too terrible to own. The whole damn team, garbage, the lot of them. Somebody's got to emerge with some minutes, and then we'll consider them. Cedi Osman, I think, played 32 in this one. He was the only Cavs player who actually got like a traditional starter's minutes. But his shot selection has been so poor. He got sort of out-usaged by some of the other guys, and then they just got blown out. Meanwhile, with Charlotte, the blowout sort of just solidified the fact that you got timeshares in most places. You can't take a lot away from this game, but good to see Jeremy Lamb get it going. He, Kemba, and Batum are the guys you're trusting. Yes, Willy Hernan-Gomez remains a great per-minute guy, but his minutes will not be high enough for the per to matter. Miami lost in Atlanta. Rough. Hassan Whiteside is set to miss their next ball game. He landed awkwardly and hurt his right knee in this one, which means it should be more Bam Adebayo or / whatever you want to say, Kelly Olynyk, who's coming off a terrible ball game and likely got dropped by everyone. But if you just so happen to sort of forget this game happened and kept Olynyk on your team, this could make for a very nice plug-and-play situation. So Whiteside is out tonight. I believe Miami plays in Detroit this evening. I don't know if this could be a longer thing, but it seems like if you're in a league where the roster moves impact the following day, this might be a situation where you just leave it alone. But you could potentially grab Olynyk and hope that he gets a couple of starts here with Whiteside out. He tended to go pretty big when he had that wiggle room last year. So make of that what you will. I'm not saying you have to, but you could. Justice Winslow had a big ball game. That one was more because of Goran Dragic being out, but he has looked okay since coming back. So I would say keep one eye on everything going on in Miami. They remain kind of a weird too many guys situation where it does seem like there's a more clear pecking order. You know, Josh Richardson is getting a lot of shots. He had a big ball game in this one. And we're still missing James Johnson and Dion Waiters. So this is definitely a homework assignment game coming up tonight. Hint, hint. Meanwhile, Atlanta put up a $123 in this one. Trae Young played very well. Alex Len and Dwayne Dedmon both had nice games at the center position. Taurean Prince was rolling, and then he got into foul trouble. And the note for me from this ballgame is that Jeremy Lin is 100% timeshare with Trae Young right now. My hope was that he could get in there and maybe play a few minutes at the 2, but it doesn't look like they're willing to let that happen. So as it stands, Jeremy Lin is not a pickup. He is not a pickup as exclusively a backup point guard. I do think Trae Young is going to have a lot of games where he struggles, and you'll see Lin get 22 minutes in those games instead of 16. But to me, outside of deeper leagues, that's not enough minutes on average, whatever you want to call it, 18, 19 for Jeremy, for him to do damage. He needs to get into the 20s consistently. It's got to be every night, 22 to 25, and then you could think about it. Houston beat Chicago. They got James Harden back, and obviously that helped a little bit. Carmelo Anthony's had a few good shooting games in a row, but you're still not really trusting him. For Chicago, Wendell Carter Jr. is piling up defensive stats right now, and he is, I mean, you can just ride this freight train for a little bit longer, but you could also probably parlay him into a pretty awesome fantasy guy. He has been as well, but if someone's trying to tell you that all of the guys coming back for Chicago are going to have zero impact on him, I say don't buy what they're selling. I know that largely he's a center, and then Portis and Markkanen have played more power forward, but the minutes get a little bit blurred in the NBA these days. And so when those guys do actually come back, it's going to impact things. Just fewer opportunities, fewer rebounds, fewer shots, fewer minutes, the whole thing. He's still going to be fine, it seems. I mean, they want to get him out on the floor, and they want to get him playing minutes. But if you're looking for a guy who's getting you 6 combined defensive stats, that type of thing just doesn't happen. So throw out some offers. See if you can steal some center taken in like the 40s or 50s in your league. And just feel good about a guy you get for the rest of the year, and you don't have to think about it. Meanwhile, Justin Holiday, he's just cruising along, and I don't see anything really changing that until maybe Chris Dunn comes back. But it seems like they might have him out there anyway. Because Holiday's not really playing point guard. Levine is mostly playing the shooting guard minutes out there. So the small forward spot is largely Justin Holiday's. Who took some minutes? Antonio Blakeney, maybe? I mean, he's just he's coasting, man. He's a 9-cat guy. 9-cat monster. Jabari Parker's terrible. He's droppable. That was one of the drops, I thought, that emerged on Saturday. I was going to put Olynyk in that category, and then the Whiteside news broke like a half hour ago, and so that wiped that out. Spurs-Pelicans, nothing really to go over from this ball game. Jazz-Nuggets, Jazz just ran out of steam, but Donovan Mitchell sprained his ankle, and it looked like pretty badly in this game. My guess would be just more Joe Ingles, more Ricky Rubio, more Jay Crowder, just a few more shots for those guys. So no big adjustments on the Utah side. No big adjustments on the Denver side. Still nobody's really stepped up off the bench to fill the Will Barton void. Not that he was coming off the bench, but you thought somebody might do something extra, and it's just kind of been the usual suspects for this team. We talked about the Lakers, talked about the Blazers already. Who hasn't played? We're going to keep going back to Friday and see if we can figure out if we missed any clubs. I don't think we've done all 30. So let's see what we missed. Clippers we haven't talked about yet. Boban got a start on Friday. He had 10 and 11, but he missed most of his free throws. Sounds like he might start again. We don't really know what's going on with Marcin Gortat. We've heard maybe he's hurt. We've heard maybe he's just getting a break. But Boban, I assume, is basically owned in every single one of your leagues because this stuff happened on Friday, and so a podcast on Monday saying he should be owned in case this sticks is not exactly helpful. That's why the tweet storms were helpful. I think I sent it out that night. It was like, look, be aware that the Clippers are going to play a team that goes small in like 3 days, and then he might just vanish again. But you pick your spots with this thing. You dump him into your lineup when the Clippers are going against a more traditional center, and you get yourself almost a guaranteed double-double. The whole elimination of one center thing is also good for Montrezl Harrell, who had 10 and 12 with 3 blocks in this game, who had in the vastly superior line to Boban because of the defensive stats. Nice also, by the way, to see Lou Williams kind of get cooking a little bit from the field in this thing. Danilo Gallinari, I would say due to slow down, but really just more due to get hurt. We talked about Orlando already, so that's a ship that's already sailed. Oklahoma City we haven't discussed. Jeremy Grant had a big game on Friday. He's a guy that we've been watching a little bit. 22, 4-4 with 3 steals, 2 3-pointers on a brilliant 9 out of 11 shooting. And he only missed 1 free throw, which has been sort of the big knock on him. But they got him out there for minutes, guys. This is a dude we were keeping an eye on, and I mentioned I had him in a number of spots. I parted with him in a couple of places, but I still have him in, I think, one or two of my leagues maybe. And there's a universe here where he could be helpful. Problem is, with his athleticism, he has a knack for getting to the free throw line where he is not good. And sort of that sucks. But hopefully the field goal percent can stick. That's the thing we need out of Jeremy Grant. Not firing away from outside. We need him getting easy looks courtesy of Westbrook and Paul George, and then that can counterbalance the bad free throw shooting a little bit. The 22 points, by the way, this is a high water mark. I mean, they just picked on a bad Wizards team in this particular ball game. So, yeah, I think he should still be on teams. He's owned in, like, most, I think all except one of my leagues. So I'm guessing he's owned in a lot of yours as well, but he's a guy that deserves a spot at the end of your bench, too. And I know you're going to say, Jeremy Grant or Shelvin Mack. And to me, it's really more about what stats you're looking for. Because Grant's free throw shooting is so bad, it's going to be really tough for him to get higher than that top 100 spot. And then with Mack, like I said, top 100, top 90. So they're pretty similar. It depends if you're hunting someone who's not going to kill you in any one particular category or chasing the Grant defensive stat upside part of things. That's where he might have the slight edge. And I drafted heavily blocks-laden teams, so the fact that Grant can block a bunch of shots is actually a little bit less enticing for me. I have, a lot of JaVale McGee on my fantasy teams, for instance. I have, in one league, I'm just running away with the blocks title because of I have Miles Turner and JaVale McGee on the same team. That's 1 and 2 right now, blocks in the NBA. I mean, nobody's coming close. I got Jokic on that team. I got Taj Gibson. Those guys are both over a block a game. Josh Richardson. Nobody's touching me. So then I look at Jeremy Grant, and I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, maybe he's better than, let's see, who's an example of someone else I have on that team. Maybe he has a better upside than TJ Warren. But in this particular instance, I need a guy who's shooting 50% from the field on decent volume and can score a little bit more than I need the blocks. I'm also kind of hoping that Warren can get the rebounding going. They're very low this season, and I know that they have Ayton around, but, I mean, they had Tyson Chandler last year, and not that he's ever been a fantastic rebounder, but he grabbed 5 each of the last 2 years, and maybe it's just a minutes thing. Maybe you just got to be out on the floor a little bit more. So anyway, that's just a Dan Besbris team personal story, not that it matters to any of you. Mavericks we haven't talked about. Luka Doncic now dealing with an ankle thing, which unfortunately means more Dennis Smith Jr. if he's out, and that means inefficient basketball. Hooray. No, I'm not buying the Dorian Finney-Smith 19-7-2 game. The Mavs have, again, this is a team that has a lot of bodies that kind of rotate in and out of the lineup. So you're probably rolling with Wes Matthews against bad defenses, Harrison Barnes. I have very few Mavericks. I think Matthews is the one I have in a couple of places because he went undrafted in a lot of my leagues. So I was able to pick him up, and you got yourself like a top 100 3-point specialist for free. But I knew there were going to be a lot of efficiency things. I think we all did, right? This was not a surprise with Dennis Smith and Doncic, these two young guys running a team. And then every once in a while, they got to throw J.J. Barea into the mix. So a team that I have avoided in no small manner. I think that's all of them. I don't think we talked about Golden State, but I don't think we need to talk about Golden State. So I'm pretty sure that we've now hit all 30, and the reverse chronological lightning round can officially be over. Thank God. I know before the season started, I talked about the era of the guest on Fantasy NBA Today, but it's really a continuing era. This is a full-time thing, and I'm really excited to be joined by one of the co-experts at The Smoking Cuban, which is a Dallas Mavericks fan-sided blog at thesmokingcuban.com. The website is thesmokingcuban.com. The Twitter handle is at thesmokingcuban, and he is on Twitter at Tyler P. Watts. Tyler, what's up, my man? Welcome to the show.
Oh, Dan, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It is my distinct pleasure. I got to ask you about some Mav stuff. I know you also do some fantasy basketball stuff as well, so we'll dig into both of those sides. But the Mavs is the question, the deep dive stuff. That's what we want to get into to try to figure out where things are headed moving forward more than anything else. Because so far this year, and feel free to correct me on some of these things, we've seen DeAndre Jordan largely make his free throws. We've seen Wesley Matthews play a boatload of minutes and basically average 20 points per game. We've seen Dennis Smith Jr. sort of continuing to do similar stuff to last season, although seemingly some small strides in the right direction. And we've seen kind of a mishmash of other guys getting into the mix every once in a while. How many of those things are going to continue to happen, and how many of those things you think are going to change, I guess, and which ones more importantly?
So obviously I don't think DeAndre is going to hit his free throws at 85 or 90%, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him hitting 70%. A lot of it, and this is kind of crazy, and Mark Followell talks about this on the broadcast a lot. Like, he mentions that when he got up to the line with the Clippers, like, it was almost like he was dreading being at the line. And this year he looks a lot more confident. He's talking a lot before and after the free throw. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him make somewhere in the 65 to 70% range, which obviously, if we're talking fantasy, is a huge boost to his value as opposed to 40 or 50% that we've seen him shoot in the past with the Clippers. Another thing for Jordan specifically that he's doing a lot more playmaking this year. I mean, you're seeing him average 3 assists per game so far, and they're actually letting him operate using passes out of that high post. And so I think he will get a few more assists than he's ever gotten in his time with the Clippers.
Oh, that's amazing stuff. Yeah, he's a top 20 fantasy asset right now, which I don't think anybody saw coming. And even if that free throw percent peels off, you saw a guy like an Andre Drummond was able to maintain top 25 value. And tough to say if that exact number is going to stick, but this is a pretty awesome start for him. What about the other old guy on the team, Wes Matthews? He's logging, about 45 minutes a game right now, taking a lot of shots as well, 15 shots a night. I mean, I hate to say this feels unsustainable because he's kind of a warrior, but shouldn't they be trying to get those shots for somebody else? I mean, what do we think we're going to get out of Wes going forward?
It's funny. Mav's Twitter and Wes Matthews have a very strained relationship. Let's put it that way. And Wes Matthews sometimes just goes full Kobe mode and he'll get the ball in a possession and he'll refuse to pass it. And so, people love to send our Twitter the little gifs of him doing it, like, with the different little emojis of what is this going on. So yeah, Wes, I can't really see him shooting this many shots. I think he's trying to get the new contract, right? We talk about that really not being a thing, but Wes might be gunning for that new contract with all the shots. You got to remember too that Harrison Barnes was out all but the last 3 games, and Harrison Barnes still kind of rounding into form. So I think some of those Wesley Matthews shots switch over to Luka Doncic and Harrison Barnes as the season goes on.
Still on the West front, if he takes fewer shots per game, is there a universe where he actually becomes a better fantasy player, where maybe a little bit more efficiency could lead to a better field goal percentage? Maybe the steals come back a little bit. Could it be that perhaps he's expending too much energy taking bad shots?
Well, and the Mavericks are using him to guard the other team's best player. Like, for all the great things about Luka Doncic, and we can talk about him all you want. I already think he's probably the Mavs' best scorer. He's not a great defender, and so they're using Wes one-on-one against the other team's best guy every single time. And then he just kind of wants his shots, but he might be a little worn down from guarding that, great player on every other team. I was railing at the beginning of the season that he kind of reverted back into Portland Wesley Matthews, that guy who took a lot of 3-pointers, kind of spotted up. Yeah, sure, maybe he takes a post touch 2 or 3 times a game, but that's it. Mavericks fans love to say Wesley Matthews shouldn't dribble the ball, and I hate to say it, but they're probably right.
All right, fair enough. I feel pretty good about what to expect from Wesley Matthews. You mentioned Doncic, so we got to probably get into him a little bit. I mean, he's been extremely exciting, if at times a bit inefficient, but it's hard to knock a guy who's averaging 20 points per game, 6.5 boards, 4 assists. Yes, there are the 4 to 5 turnovers per game, but you got to think some of that is just kind of settling into the league. He looks pretty comfortable for a rookie.
He looks like a future star, if you ask me. I mean, he just dropped that 31-point game against the Spurs, and when he has the ball in his hands, the Mavericks are best on offense. Their most effective play is already the pick and roll with DeAndre Jordan and Luka Doncic. And when Doncic can get his way into that high paint and he has a beautiful floater that he hits, or he can get all the way to the rim, or he passes out to Jordan, that's probably their most effective offense. And here's the thing. He's already getting the respect. You're already seeing, Kawhi Leonard guarded him, then DeMar DeRozan last night for the Spurs. He's already drawing the other team's best defender. He's already drawing plenty of double teams in the games. So I think that the scoring is real, and the other teams are seeing that too, and they're afraid of Luka Doncic having the ball.
So looking towards the other guard spot, Dennis Smith Jr. was someone who came into the league last year with a boatload of hype off of some massive dunks during summer league and preseason games. The percentage is a little bit better for him this season. Some slight improvements, still a lot of turnovers, which sort of problematic when Doncic is also pretty high in that regard. Can those two guys coexist in a way that doesn't create this many easy buckets for other teams? Is this just a growing curve kind of thing? Is this a pairing that you feel can work going forward? And does Dennis Smith have a game from a fantasy perspective that you think could eventually work its way into, certainly in a 9-category format, a little bit more value?
So for Dennis, I think he's adjusting a little bit to not having the ball in his hands every play, right? He's more of a traditional point guard. A lot of people make the comparison to Russell Westbrook. That's what they want him to be. Now, obviously, that's a very lofty goal, and it's probably never going to happen. But I do think they can coexist in this sense. I think that Doncic is fine kind of being a secondary creator at some points. And together, they've found each other on a couple alley-oops already, and it's all kind of a work in progress for this Mavericks team in the sense that they added Doncic, they added Jordan, Harrison Barnes has been hurt, Dirk's been hurt. So they've been kind of still slowly forming, what they're going to be. I do think the backcourt there is going to be fine, and we can even talk about that. Like Doncic is pretty much guards the other team's power forward, so I don't even know if you consider him a guard. He might be a power forward.
Good point.
So Dennis, here's what I would expect. I would expect probably 42 or 43% from the field. I'd expect somewhere in the 73 to 75% on his free throws. I'd expect like a 3-pointer and a half. Probably 3 rebounds is probably all he's going to get just because they have Jordan now and Doncic, who are both getting a lot more rebounds than anyone they had last year. Probably he can get to the 5 assists again. He can average a steal, like 0.3 blocks, and he'll probably get around 15 points. Probably pretty similar numbers to what he got last year. Maybe we'll see a little uptick in the percentages. Nothing crazy, though.
Can I just comment on how enjoyable it is to talk to a team expert that's also a fantasy guy? You make it so that I can ask the questions that I always want to ask without feeling guilty for asking them. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
Again, we're talking to Tyler Watts of the Smoking Cuban, and you also do some writing at #basketball. We got some buddies over there. Mark Roberts has been on this podcast before. Again, that is at the Smoking Cuban. Tyler, you can find on Twitter at Tyler P. Watts. Watts is the last name. What about Dirk? You mentioned him when you were talking about sort of what the other guys are doing. What is he going to do when he gets healthy? How many minutes do they even expect out of him? He's 40 now.
So I don't think the Dirk and DeAndre thing is going to work as far as having those two on the court, save for a few matchups where the other team is playing 2 very big men. So Dirk seems comfortable coming off the bench. I think Dirk is comfortable playing like 18 minutes a night. We've seen that he had ankle surgery in April, right, to end last season. I'm sure most people remember that. And he's still not back. He had a setback in that ankle. So I think he knows that his body might be failing him a little bit, and he wants to play a few less minutes. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him somewhere around 18 minutes. But he's going to spread the floor on that second unit, and he's going to hit a lot of threes, and he's probably going to be really efficient at it because that's what we've seen from Dirk pretty much forever. So so the fantasy numbers probably aren't going to be super great in the sense that he's only going to play like 18 to 20 minutes a game. But at the same time, in those 18 to 20 minutes, the numbers and the efficiency should be pretty high.
It is when everybody is healthy on this team, and that's mostly waiting on Barnes to get back to full strength is the direction I'm pointing. Does this Mavs team basically become like mostly starters at that point? Is a pretty, not to say that it's a 5-man rotation, but it feels like once it's Doncic, Barnes, Dennis Smith Jr., DeAndre Jordan, and Wes Matthews, it seems like those guys, if the last game is any indicator, are going to be playing about 2/3 to 3/4 of the minutes every game, and that makes the bench pretty quiet.
Yeah, and Mavericks fans love to say that they have one of the best benches in the league, and obviously JJ Barea is exciting, and Dirk will do Dirk things. And then they have a couple exciting guys in Maxi Kleber and Dwight Powell that fans get excited about.
Yeah, I like those guys too.
I don't really see them playing a whole ton of minutes when, the whole starters get back and they're all playing. You could see Doncic minutes come down a little bit. I mean, he's playing like 36 a game. I wouldn't be surprised if Carlisle massages that down to like 32, 33 once they're back to full strength. And he may do that with some of the other starters too, just to play the bench a little bit more. But yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of heavy minutes out of the starters for the Mavs this year.
All right, this is probably the hardest question, and I saved it towards the end. This is more the reality side of things, and that's the Mavericks, for all of the fun we've had with Luka Doncic looking really awesome and DeAndre Jordan having his best season in a couple of years. They haven't won a ton of games left. And there are a bunch of old guys on this team that I would presume would rather win than lose. So it would be sort of hard to sell the team on tanking the way that, they were so... God, the Mavs were so good at tanking last year. That was like... that was art form level tank. How does those two narratives kind of butt heads as this season goes on? You've got the guys that are on kind of farewell tours like Dirk and Matthews, who's probably with contract stuff. Is he back? DeAndre Jordan, I believe he's on a 1-year deal, right?
Yes, DeAndre Jordan is a 1-year deal, and Matthews is in the last year of his 4-year contract where he got paid a little extra because DeAndre didn't come 4 years ago, if you remember that.
That's right. So how do they rectify those things of a team that hasn't won a ton of games left? I guess the answer is probably win a few games, but what do you think shakes out on that side?
So they're 2-5, right? They played 7 games so far, and they've been in pretty much every game. Now, the Suns kind of blew them out on opening night, but every other game they've been in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left. They've been within 5 points in every other game. So, maybe they're losing a lot of coin flips here. I mean, we're still kind of waiting to see on that. I don't know that they're a playoff team. I think they want to be a playoff team, and that's kind of the way they built this team. I think that they would maybe trade Wes Matthews, although the front office and the organization seems to be a lot higher than him than maybe the fans are. So you could see that Wes Matthews trade come at some point, but he's also in a really high contract that I don't know who's really necessarily going to want to buy. I think that this is a team who probably finishes 10th or 11th in the West, and they're better than they've been. Like this team's a lot better than they've been the last 2 years, but I don't think they're quite to the playoffs yet. And I think that they probably bring DeAndre back after this season, and they continue to get better with those two young talents. And
interesting.
Doncic
Okay.
and Smith Jr.
So you feel like they could probably just sort of ride this roster and just sort of see how far it takes them this year without any kind of, I don't know that I want to call it drama necessarily, but you feel like the players would be sort of okay with a decent season, that they wouldn't create a ton of situations that people would need to monitor?
Yeah, no, I don't really see that happening.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
Obviously, like Wes Matthews gets the label that he's like the competitor, and he won't talk to the media after losses and things like that. But at the same time, like, I think that there's just not a huge market to trade for Wes Matthews, so it's going to be a difficult deal to make.
Excellent. Tyler, my man, thank you so much for a little Mavs deep dive. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
He is Tyler Watts at Tyler P. Watts on Twitter. Give him a follow. He's a co-expert at The Smoking Cuban, thesmokingcuban.com, the Mavericks fan-sided website. He's also a fantasy writer at #basketball, if it wasn't obvious, based on the fact that I asked him a bunch of Mavs fantasy-related questions. And, of course, on every episode of Fantasy NBA Today, we tie a coupon code to our guest on the show. We'll go ahead and just make this one Doncic. DONCIC. That's $3 off anything over at the Hoopball Premium website. Tyler, once again, thank you, my man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tyler Watts, smart dude, good dude. I think he enjoyed the fact that I was bugging him about all the fantasy stuff. We'll do more fantasy stuff with him next time as well. Really fun guest to have. Thanks again to Tyler. As we mentioned, that code is Doncic. $3 off. Talked about the fact that we would give a coupon out. Get that in-season premium down to $17 for 5.5 months of access to all of the Hoop Ball pros. Terrific. It's terrific. It's an unbelievable deal. It's $3.09 a month. Right? Am I getting that right? $3.10? Somewhere in there. Someone can do the math. Break out a calculator. I tried to do it in my head, and all things go to hell. Big Monday. A lot of stuff to look at for this evening. So let's quickly plow through it. From a sports betting standpoint, Houston a 1-point favorite on the road at Indiana. I like Houston, actually, in this ballgame. I know they've been playing poorly, but Indiana's coming off that crazy emotional win over Boston as they fight for the top spots in the Eastern Conference. Not that Houston's what you'd call a letdown team, but after that other ballgame, there's a little bit of a letdown element to this one. Thad Young is under the weather. It sounds like Oladipo was fighting through something. So I think these little things behind the scenes. So I do have a slight lean to the Houston side. Orlando, 4.5-point favorites at home to the Cavaliers. This is just the kind of game where a crap dink team like Cleveland could just be like, hey, we got away from home. Let's play better for a night. So I want nothing to do with this one. Detroit, 3.5-point favorites over Miami. I actually kind of like Miami, but I'm not touching it because no Whiteside. Do they sort of get the ball moving a little bit better in this game, or do they get exposed by Andre Drummond? It's generally the kind of game where Whiteside plays well because they need a big lumbering ox out there. So not dealing with that one either. New York, 2.5-point home favorites over the Chicago Bulls. That's fine. New Orleans, a road dog, 4.5 points. Oklahoma City starting to play better. Oklahoma City, just like last year to me, they are so mercurial in that when they're shooting well, when Westbrook is shooting well or Paul George is shooting well, they can just dominate anybody in the NBA. But then there are nights where those two guys shoot like 38% between the two of them, and they don't have a prayer. So who the hell knows which OKC you're going to get on any given night. And hence, no thanks. Denver, 2-point favorites against Boston. This is going to be a great game. It's going to be a tight game. I'm not touching that line. I mean, I think it's going to be decided on the last 3 or 4 possessions, and so you figure that way, you just bet on whichever team you think is going to win the ball game. I think it's probably Denver, but do they win by 3? Maybe not. Toronto, 2-point favorites in Utah, the second half of a back-to-back from Los Angeles. Give me the Jazz. I know they're without Donovan Mitchell, but this is a tough spot for Toronto. This is the back-to-back in altitude. Sometimes you just close your eyes and bet it blind. And what this line tells us is you shift 3 points for a neutral site and you shift 2 more for a back-to-back situation. Of course, I got to double-check and make sure I'm not forgetting when Utah played last. Yeah, they didn't play yesterday. Utah was off, so they are rested, which is 2 points. They're at home, which is 3. So this is a 5-point swing from a neutral site, which means is the money really coming in a way where Toronto is a 7-point favorite over the Utah Jazz at home? Would you really make Toronto a 10-point favorite if this game was in Canada? I don't think so, man. So there's value. This is a value proposition. You bet on the Utah Jazz, you close your eyes. It's a difficult bet to make when there's no Donovan Mitchell, and as well as Toronto's playing, you're getting in front of that freight train, but it's tough, man. Toronto in LA and a 6:30 p.m. start. Yeah, they beat the hell out of the Lakers, but they had to get on a plane in Los Angeles and I'm out here, so I can tell you that game ended around 9 o'clock local time. You don't get to the airport and through all that quickly in Los Angeles. Now, it's good that it's Sunday, so there wasn't anything they had to contend with. Usually that's the one day of the week you can drive in LA and not hit 9,000 other people every half block. I'm guessing they probably got out of Los Angeles around 11:30 or midnight local time, because I know it takes baseball teams about an hour if they speed pack up after a game. There's more equipment in baseball, so maybe they can move a little faster in basketball, and the pros can probably get going. They've got multiple attendants and stuff. But then you're talking Staples to LAX. That's a half an hour, a little less. They got their charter stuff going on. So I'm guessing they probably got into Utah at about 3 or 4 a.m., 3:30 local time Mountain Time, hotel by 4 or 5, asleep by 5 in the morning. That's a tough back-to-back, man. And then that game starts at 6, actually half an hour earlier Pacific time. I mean, it's 7, I think, Mountain Time. So they started at 7:30 Mountain Time yesterday, and they're starting at 7 Mountain Time today with all that travel in between. They're going to get gassed in the third quarter. So I like Utah on that one. This is the first one where I'm not even calling it a lean. This is the altitude back-to-back. We bet it every time. They don't always win, but they do hit it usually better than a 52.4% clip, and that's all you're really looking for. Clippers, 5-point favorites to the Minnesota Timberwolves. We don't know who's playing in this game, although I still kind of like the Clippers anyway. And Golden State, 14.5 points. Oh, my God. Giant favorite over the Memphis Grizzlies. Grizzlies historically have actually played the Warriors kind of tough, but I don't know, man. I'm not touching that thing. If I did anything, it would be the underdog just because it's a ton. From a fantasy standpoint, which, of course, is why most of you are listening to this podcast, Houston, Indiana, not a whole lot of interesting stuff going on in that ball game. We're starting to get a feel for it. This, by the way, this week 4, is when I think you really start to have a good feel for rotations. So we're not really exploring that for a lot of teams anymore. Cleveland, Orlando is definitely a game I want us watching. You got to watch Cleveland. At least watch the first half. And if you get so sick to your stomach, then I give you permission to turn the thing off. But just look who's in there and for how long and how aggressive they are and whether or not they know how to pass. Does J.R. Smith play a bunch of minutes? Does Jordan Clarkson still take 6 to 8 shots every half he's in a basketball? I mean, he's just like going Chuck City out there. Is Sam Decker winning the power forward job over Larry Nance? Is Tristan Thompson really going to still play 27 minutes and give you 9 and 9? I mean, it's a weird team right now. They are going to be so far behind the 8 ball by the time Kevin Love comes back that, God, I hope that he bothers to play all of his games the rest of the way. He probably won't, but at some point they're going to be so bad they don't even need to worry about tanking. They'll just be the worst. Miami, Detroit, we're obviously watching what happens with Hassan Whiteside out, because maybe there is a streaming pickup potential here as a big man in Miami if he's going to miss more than one game. Chicago, New York, no Kevin Knox yet, so you're not really watching that position battle. I mean, this should be a high-scoring game by all accounts, but who the hell knows, really? I think you're running Mitch Robinson out there just to see what happens. You're not starting Ntilikina. You're hoping Tim Hardaway Jr. goes. I had the gall to try Vonleh in one of his 2 games on that back-to-back, and his foul issues 2 straight games are just atrocious. Or it wasn't a back-to-back. It was 2 and 3. This is the back-to-back. I don't know. Do I have the balls to try to roll him out there again and hope for 9 or 10 rebounds? Nah. It's not worth it. He's a drop, by the way. It's not going to stick. It's not going to stick. And we talked about it on, I think, Thursday's show. In a best-case scenario, he gets you 10 and 10, which you can get from Tristan Thompson, who's basically available everywhere also and doesn't foul everybody. New Orleans, Oklahoma City, we're still watching Jeremy Grant. Boston, Denver, nothing going on there. Toronto, Utah, not much there. I mean, Delon Wright played 21 minutes, and Danny Green was still awesome last night. It looks to me like he's going to have a role in Toronto, like the one he wanted to have in San Antonio, but got yanked around by Pop too much. And so get him into those high 20s in minutes, give him 8 or 9 shots, give him 10 shots a game if he gets out and running, steals, blocks, some rebounds. I mean, give me all the Danny Green. I don't think the shine is coming off this dude. He's not going to be a top, what was he? He was like a top 30 player for the first 2 weeks of the year. I think he's settled back in now. He's number 41, guys. Danny Green and Draymond Green are actually back-to-back in 9-cat, 40 and 41. I actually legitimately believe he could be a top 50 guy for the season. And I think I had that one first. I was way behind the curve on Montrezl Harrell. See, you say I never admit when I'm wrong. I waited and waited and waited on Montrezl Harrell, and I got him no place, but I made the move on Danny Green. So I'm going to take credit for that one, and I'm going to take a kick in the nards for the other one. Calculated gambles on a lot of this stuff. Minnesota, Los Angeles Clippers. I mean, you're obviously watching the Boban stuff. Feels like Karl Anthony Towns should just devour him, but then Karl Anthony Towns is not really the big cat right now. He's sort of like the soft, fluffy feline hanging out in the corner some nights. So maybe that's tonight. And then with the Clippers, I hate to say it like this because it sounds terrible. We sort of need somebody to thin the herd a little bit, and then maybe some of those backcourt guys can get going a little more. Minnesota, hopefully Derrick Rose plays. If he does, there should be plenty for him to do. And then Memphis, Golden State, still watching Shelvin Mack, still watching Salomo. This should be a really tough game for them to get going. If they can get going against the Warriors, then we're in much better shape. Most guys don't, as they get played right out of the gym. One more big thank you to Tyler Watts for hopping on today's podcast. Again, that coupon code is Doncic for $3 off the in-season premium membership at hoop-ball.com. I am Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris on Twitter. If you feel so inclined to give me a follow, you don't have to. You can if you want to. Please continue to subscribe to the podcast. Give us a rating or a review if you like what you hear. Tyler, by the way, you can follow on Twitter at Tyler P. Watts. At The Smoking Cuban is the website. If you want to learn some more about the Dallas Mavericks, they got good stuff going on over there every dang day. Have a wonderful Monday, everybody. Back with you tomorrow. We'll talk to Joe Garcia, who covers the San Antonio Spurs, for a little deep dive on what's going on down in Texas. That's on tomorrow's podcast. Wednesday, it'll be a mailbag show with our good buddy Vince Miracle making a return to the pod once again. And then Thursday, we have a guest yet to be scheduled. Fun, right? Open slot. And then Brewski, of course, on Friday. That'll be the live show. We'll keep you posted on that as the week goes along. That's all for right now, folks. Stay tuned, by the way, for the DFS aficionados. We may have a contest coming up. We'll tell you about it most likely on tomorrow's episode. Again, enjoy the Monday. Enjoy the big card. So long.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.